Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing well. My name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that are focused on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. And we are so thrilled to be offering one of the first of its kind digital, virtual, and continuous learning environments, enabling parents and children to connect from all around the world. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our different social media platforms provide us with an opportunity to have discussions and to create space on all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures for us to live up to our bold slogan, support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, this also translates as recreating and co-creating environments, both socially and politically, that will enable our children to thrive. Now, for those of you who are particularly keen on the topic, we also write thought pieces every other Sunday. We actually just released a thought piece this past Sunday, so be sure to meander over to the website and check out our online content. Now, if it is the case that you are looking for a listening alternative, well, we're available on 12 different podcast platforms for your listening leisure, and we provided you with access to the links in the description down below. Now, as is the convention, be sure to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you are aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like these conversations and you want to keep them going, like, comment, and share this segment. Let's get into it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today our topic of discussion is mental health. And on the conversation of mental health, I want to talk about how we create a foundation that allows us to have and to continuously build a healthy relationship with self. And I think this is an important conversation to have. I think many of us don't necessarily have the appropriate toolkit. Like, we were raised in settings that maybe weren't the best examples of how to foster a healthy relationship with ourselves, and a lot of us fumble because we don't necessarily have the example that some people do have in leading, healthy relationships with others. But I think that makes the journey just a little bit more special when it is the case that you decide to break away from toxic dynamics, from toxic family structures, and try to rebuild a foundation, starting with just the feeling that there can be healthier for you. And I think that that's a lot of why many of us are on a healing journey, where we've got no contact with toxic family structures, where we're really trying to lean into the practice, to the exercise, and the experience of falling deeply in love with ourselves, but in the healthiest way possible. And that can be challenging depending on what our foundations are. A lot of us are breaking generational cycles. We're breaking family patterns that were normalized but really dysfunctional. We're really making a point to not normalize dysfunction. And that requires distance, and it requires a bit of a level set and a reset. But I think even before we level set and reset and we start with our building blocks, we need to first acknowledge the choice that comes with wanting to build a healthy relationship with ourselves. And that's the choice to choose yourself, right? And I think that any healthy relationship that you would like to foster starts with the relationship that you have first and foremost with yourself. And I think that it is so important because a lot of us are socialized to believe that the relationships around us are paramount. It's absolutely important to do what we can to continuously build and feed into the relationships that we have with our family or with our friends, or fill in the blank. strength, but not a lot is spoken of by way of building a relationship with ourselves. It's something that we awaken to, it's something that we come to realize depending on the life experiences that we have and at different phases and stages in each and every one of our lives. So for me, I can say that it happened really young. I think I chose myself. I decided to choose myself at a very, very young age. And I think it was just this inner sense of social justice that maybe was ringing the bell on what behaviors I just didn't appreciate. And I really just started with being very adamant that I wasn't going to normalize behaviors that hurt me. And I think that that's where this all began. I think it's a nature thing more than it is a nurture thing. I think my own inner barometer of social justice was activated because of the injustices that I felt I was personally dealing with as a child that I didn't fully understand. But I think that my feeling indignant about the way that I felt I was treated because I had a sense of how I ought to be treated has really been the guiding light that has led me to where I am now in my relationship with myself. So I do think that many of us have different starting points by way of the relationship that we cultivate with ourselves. I think that I've had a strong relationship with myself because I've been very intentional about, being mindful about my emotional needs, my physical needs at a very young age. Like I was always very cognizant as to what it was that I was pushing towards as I was building my own sense of independence. And I built a sense of independence very young and very mindfully. Like I was very proud of the fact that I could exercise independence in so many different ways. But what drove my independence was really trying to be aware of my needs, right? And as a young child, it was difficult, I think, when I think about like other young children and how they navigate. I think that there are certain of us, like if it is the case that we don't feel that our needs are being met, but we feel like they ought to be met, we do our best to try to meet those needs on our own. And I think that that is the first step towards having expressions of self-love. It's really rising up to the occasion and meeting our needs. And at first it was like doing my best to meet my needs by way of making sure that I was on top of the routines that my life required and on top of some of the responsibilities that my life required. I wanted to be as independent as possible. And that meant I was very receptive to paying attention to what my needs were and allowing that to be my driving light. Another step in the journey was learning where the boundaries should lie, right? And I am someone, I have fairly thick skin. I can handle quite a lot. I was raised in a family where, you had to just let things brush off your shoulder. And I had mentioned in a few videos, I was always very sensitive. So I had to develop thick skin just to be able to, deal with the dynamics that were normal in my family setting. And I think that because of that, there's a lot that I can take. And I think that I reached a point probably post-secondary, so maybe post-high school, where I was like, I can take this, but I have no desire to. And that was a second step in my healing journey, because before, I was so keen on building relationships with others and fostering community, and I wanted to have lifelong friends, but I really didn't know what the barometer should be, like what the standard should be for a lifelong friend. So I took a lot of bad behavior and I just kind of let it roll off my shoulders because I felt that, in valuing these relationships, I had to just be a little bit accommodating. And then I woke up and I was like, well, if it's hurting me and if I'm really very invested in the things that I say and the things that I preach about being my own support and having a healthy relationship with myself, and that needs to be reflected in the relationships I choose to have with others. And that has been a longer journey. That was something that it took me probably well into my late 20s to really fully actualize, because it takes a lot of bravery, because it means you're saying no to a lot of different people. And in saying no to those people, you're saying no to the people that they're attached to, right? So there's a lot of consequences in being very firm about your boundaries, because it doesn't necessarily just impact you and the person in front of you. It can impact your entire social network. It can change the way that people socialize with you because they're accommodating bad behavior that you're not willing to. And I think that being okay with letting people go that otherwise you have no issues with, but because they don't take issue with the way someone is treating you, that means that they themselves aren't a good fit for, the social fabric that you're hoping to cultivate around yourself. And I think that took me a longer period of time, but it was a fundamental building block in my journey towards building a really healthy relationship with myself. It was recognizing that just because I can handle bad behavior, just because I can, rise above, doesn't mean I should always put myself in a situation where I need to. And it's much better to preserve my sense of relationship that I'm cultivating with myself, not just by exercising and rising to the occasion by meeting the expectations that my needs are establishing of me. So I am aware of what my emotional needs are, and I know I can satisfy my emotional needs, I can satisfy my mental needs, and for the most part satisfy, my physical needs. Like, these are things that I have really understood that I don't need a community necessarily to do it. A community is nice to have, but what is absolutely fundamental is that I am always being responsive to my needs and valuing my needs above all else, right? Like, I can't value someone's relationship so much that it's hindering my ability to meet my own needs, right? And I think that that is a journey that many of us are really trying to juggle, because there's so much rhetoric and so much narrative around being selfish by being mindful and aware of what your needs are. But yet, if your needs aren't met, your ability to sustainably support and meet the needs and expectations of the people that you care to have in your circle is going to be finite. It's going to be something that will not last very long, or it can turn a really healthy relationship into an unhealthy relationship if you're being very one-sided in the way that you're supporting someone else's needs. I think we need to think about our needs if we want to think about long-term, sustainable, healthy relationships. I think it's part of the equation, and many of us are still figuring our way to that path, and hopefully this video will give you that clarity. And in fact, a lot of the relationships that I was in, it was really in the discussions around needs and expectations around needs, because I was always willing to meet the needs of like the people that I was with at the time. Like, I was always trying to be very perceptive of what their needs were and be proactive in the way that I was responding to their needs. But when I didn't see that that was reciprocated, I recognized that, like if I'm spending all my time being aware and cognizant and trying to perceive what your needs are and be responsive to your needs, then I'm thinking about you. And if you're not doing that, if you're thinking about yourself, then there's no one thinking about me. And I think that realization helped me recognize that I can't be in any relationship that requires that all my attention is focused on them. All of my relationships require a balance, and it doesn't necessarily need to be 50-50, but there needs to be a portion of my attention that reflects back on me. And that is what I expect in a partner as well. I don't want someone who completely neglects themselves, and I would never want to put someone in a position where they feel like they needed to neglect themselves in order to meet my needs. And I recognize that part of my cultivating a healthy relationship with myself was not allowing myself to be drawn to or lured by a relationship that required all of me. And I think that that is the basis of many healthy relationships, where you're allowed to keep part of you for yourself in that relationship, and you're not required or requested to lose yourself in that relationship. And I think that that is the best foundation to build. Like, if you're thinking about a family, and I'm sure like you're dealing with, a growing, evolving nucleus that involves like very dependent children, and at that point, like, you need to really be cognizant of their needs. But I think that if you build a foundation where your needs are met from the beginning, I just don't see it being something that is healthy in maintaining when you add more people to the equation. It's just, you're stretching yourself out too thin. And that's something that I've recognized. Like, building a healthy relationship with myself means I am always setting myself up to not stretch so much that I completely break, right? Like, I need to make sure that I am okay, that I have enough mental space to check in to make sure that I'm okay, that I have like the emotional repertoire at least partially filled up most, if not all of the time. Like, it doesn't need to be completely full, but it can't be empty. And I'm the one who has agency over that. Like, I can't offload that responsibility into someone else. It's my job to make sure that my emotional, mental, intellectual, physical repertoires are at least, at the very minimum, half full, not half empty, half full. And that has really helped build into me cultivating a relationship with myself. And then also, like, the last point that I want to make in this video is recognizing what's conditional in this life. And I think everything beyond you and this temporal existence of ours is conditional. And a lot of us don't recognize that because we were kind of fed this ideal that the ideal life encompasses some norms, right? Some norms. And if those norms don't apply to you and that the way that those translate in your life, they're not very healthy, then they're conditional, right? So like, for me, as much as I love family and as much as I love friends, they're conditional. Like, if family is unhealthy, if friends are unhealthy, if those dynamics aren't good for me, if I'm very often finding myself bending and losing myself and trying to maintain those relationships, then those relationships gotta go. And I'm okay with that, because I think what for me is not conditional is me always being there for me, right? And I think that having a healthy relationship with yourself means that at the end of all things, like, if it is the case that you're being forced to choose between yourself and someone else, if that's the choice they're putting on you, if that's the ultimatum that they're putting in front of you, then the choice needs to be you every single time. And I think that that's a choice that you feel at a spiritual level. Like, I think at a spiritual level, every part of me knows that, like, I will choose me above all things. Like, there's nothing in this world that I will value over and above the way that I value myself. And not to say that I don't value other people, but I am my vehicle through life, right? So how could I deprioritize or diminish or devalue me, right? And I think so many of us find that to be a difficult concept to wrap our heads around without seeing ourselves as selfish. But at the end of the day, you are your own vehicle through life. Like, you were born in this body, and this is the body that you're gonna leave this world in, right? And not anyone else can give you that guarantee. Like, just you, yourself, and you. Like I said again in a few videos, 3-part being, like your mind, body, physical self. Like, that's a relationship that you have throughout every stage and phase. So it's important that you prioritize it accordingly. That's the video that I wanted to share today. I think that it's an important video to have because I think a lot of us are managing our mental health and we're struggling with it because we're making too many things in our life that are conditional, unconditional, and we're not recognizing that the one thing that should be unconditional is the relationship that we build, foster, maintain, and evolve with ourselves, and how that should shift and change the way we view and value the relationships that we keep and the relationships that we dismiss. In any case, that was the food for thought for today, and it really is just food for thought. It's me kind of reflecting out loud on my journey, on the person I was and the person that I am today, and how much shifted in between, right? All those experiences that has really informed how to foster and maintain a healthy relationship with myself when I didn't necessarily have that example, right? And I think that it's really important that we recognize that we have within ourselves the example that we need to foster a healthy relationship. I mean, there are needs that you hear reflected to yourself on a day-to-day basis that you hope that other people will pick up, that really only need you to pick them up, right? Like something super small, like that you are hoping that your partner, you know, keys in on. Like, you can key in on it and you can fulfill that need. And I think the more that we recognize our agency and our autonomy and meeting our own needs, the less we rely on other people to meet our needs for us. And the more we can find ourselves in relationships where we can rise to meet the needs that are ours to carry, that our partner kind of puts on us, but we can also be the ones to carry our own needs, right? We're not so dependent on someone else validating us or filling us up that we are left completely paralyzed and unable to meet those needs on our own. And I think that that's where I want to leave the conversation for today. It's really important, I think, to recognize that you hold the power to meet your needs if your needs aren't met. And it's in meeting your needs in small little things. It could even be something small as like the kind of coffee you buy in the day, or, you know, the kind of stationery you want to purchase. And I'm a stationery person. Like, for me, like the one ritual that I loved above my birthday, above New Year's Eve, which, as you know, is my favorite holiday, is like back to school. And even as an adult, I have my own little back to school ritual because I love office supplies. It's just something that I love. I love being around physical books. I'll never be a Kindle queen because I love like the physical experience of a book, right? So I think all of these little things, they translate into like small acts, but impactful acts of self-love that all of us should start to incorporate a little bit more. Gives us a little bit more incentive, more courage, more bravery to do the bigger gestures, to break away from the structures that make it very difficult for us to build and maintain and evolve a healthy relationship with self. That's it for today, but definitely not all. Now, before letting you go, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that we will be going live at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our Facebook page. So definitely be sure to tune in. Now, these events are paid events, so if you do see yourself participating in our community on an ongoing basis, then I do suggest that you take a look at one of our package plans. Yes, so we do offer package plans over and above our live events, as well as access to webinars and workshops largely focused on self-mastery over and above these events. So tune in and be part of our game changer community, being part of the change that you want to see, allowing us a small role to play in your journey. We are on the road to 1K, so we do invite you to join. Follow us across all of our social media platforms. Leave a comment down below, and I look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.